Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. I promised I'd do a video on Christmas Eve, but Spurs weren't in a particularly festive or giving mood, were they? Certainly for the fans, maybe they were more so for Chelsea. We've just literally, I think it's just landed recently, the news that Son's appeal has failed as well. So yeah, not the happiest of Christmases for anyone involved with Tottenham Hotspur. Absolute shocker. It really was. Where should we start? They were just dreadful on and off the pitch. Let's start with the off the pitch stuff, because obviously it's been making all the headlines, and Spurs still investigating the reports or alleged racist abuse that Antonio Rudiger passed on to Azpilicueta, who then passed on to the referee. Spurs have been pretty much doing what they can with this brand new stadium, that they can kind of look at every single seat, and they've been studying hours of footage, CCTV footage. Thus far, the evidence is inconclusive, they say. It's an incredibly tough one. I've seen, obviously, everything that's been going on social media, the different reactions to this, and every which way. Hopefully, if anyone kind of reads my stuff or listens to these, I kind of try not to lean too heavily in either direction, really, because as I just said, really, the investigation is still going. I've seen people saying it's been made up. I've seen people saying that it's horrendous, it's happened. I think we're still very much in that middle ground, and personally, I don't believe anyone would make up something like that. Not at all, not at all. Obviously, there would be some thoughts of whether it was misheard or anything, but we don't know any of that. That's what I'm saying, is we can't really make any logical conclusions on that until the absolute full and thorough investigation is done. I've spoken to Spurs fans who claim that it was just, there was booing, and the booing was mistaken for, what monkey chants, essentially, was what Rudiger was claiming had been done. I think from what I've heard, he hasn't insinuated that people were making gestures at him, which obviously, had that been happening, that probably would have made it, well, it would have definitely made it far easier for the cameras to pick up stuff. I think the problem also lies in the fact that if you're looking at a camera, I think they've been using lip readers as well. It would be quite difficult, you'd imagine, from a camera shot to differentiate between boos and these kind of alleged monkey chants as well. So it's a horrible situation. It really is, and obviously no one wants to believe that they've been abused in that way as well. It's apologies, I've got a bit of a tickly throat today. It's horrible stuff, and obviously we've had examples of it this season as well, at other grounds as well, and we don't want to see it. It's mad. If it is proved to be the case that it was taking place, there's just no room for it. I don't know what would go through anyone's brain to then go and do something, or to even in anger or frustration for that to kind of emerge from them. But like I say, we've had no firm proof yet. But let's see what happens. What we have had conclusive evidence of, obviously, is someone lobbing their coffee cups onto the pitch. Spurs have now come out and dished out an indefinite ban to the person who threw them. I've seen differing views on this as well. I've seen some people say, "Oh, it's what have we come to in the world where just throwing a cup of coffee onto a pitch?" But that's kind of not the point, is it? It could be anything that's being thrown onto a pitch. It's the fact that it's a missile. That's the term used for it. What's to say, that wasn't a full cup of coffee, scalding hot coffee, and was thrown onto Kepa's the back of his head, down his face. You can't justify it as, oh, it's only that. That's my feeling on that one. It's either something lobbed onto the pitch, which you shouldn't be doing in the first place. And as I tweeted out earlier, I think that person will right now be thinking to themselves, I wish I'd just drunk my coffee. However upset you get at something, you are at a form of, I suppose, entertainment, as it were. If you're at a music concert, although I know they throw things at music concerts, but what would possess you to do that? It's I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I can't understand that one. But anyway, that one has been dealt with, and obviously the allegations of racist abuse, they'll continue to be investigated over the coming days while they look into stuff with, I think, consultation with the Metropolitan Police and also the PFA, Premier League. And also, obviously, you have to report as well that Metropolitan Police have confirmed that a Chelsea fan certainly a gentleman was arrested for racist abuse towards Son Heung-min. It's understood that it's a Chelsea fan, and even more interestingly, it's understood that it was Chelsea fans that pointed him out and made him authorities aware of him, and that's interesting. You know, it's a brave thing to do. Well, I say it's brave. It's brave depending on obviously where you're at and the groups you're at. And I think, you know, I was listening to a radio debate about that yesterday. It probably is going to be the future, isn't it? I think it will get to a point where people just be so sick of this happening, and clearly now the spotlight and scrutiny is on it. Games are going to be more frequently stopped whenever this happened, and this protocol, it was a messy protocol at Tottenham. It was, no one quite understood what was being implemented. We had 3 Tannoy announcements, warning against racist abuse and the fact that it was interfering with the game. That led some of us to believe that, you know, there'd been different instances of it. It hadn't. It was just the one reported instance, and then they followed this protocol that was 3 separate announcements, which obviously is very different to the ones that we've seen elsewhere. I think we saw it, didn't we, in the Bulgaria versus England game, where they did an announcement, stopped the game, then they kind of threatened to walk off as well. That's the problem. I think there's no unified protocol. There's a UEFA one, a Premier League one, and I think that just needs to be made clear. But like I say, it's going to be very, very much scrutinised. And I think there's going to be football fans who are just normal, you know, the 99.9999% of people who don't want that at football matches are eventually, they're just going to turn on their own if they're doing that, because just why? I don't get it. I can't even know how any like-minded person in today's world would even think to do that. But that's a whole other massive society issue, isn't it? And unfortunately, I'm not intelligent enough to get deep into that or find any solution to that, because many far better people have tried and failed thus far. But hopefully it phases out over time and sooner rather than later. Let's talk about on the pitch. On the pitch, it was awful. And I think what was most disappointing about it was that Mourinho had, you know, made a big deal about having this full week to work with his players, and uninterrupted by matches week. Gave the players the Monday and the Tuesday off, so they were fresh and recovered. And then it was really told me that, was it the Friday before the match, that he was doing these high intensity training sessions with them, really getting their kind of bodies used to what he wanted from them, the philosophy, the principles. And then they rocked up on Sunday, and then other than the first 5 minutes when I felt they pressed quite well, absolute shambles. It really was. Absolute. Oh, it was horrendous. I mean, the team selection, let's not let Mourinho off like that either. He went with it was unchanged, wasn't it? Unchanged team selection, which meant, despite having absolutely no midfield control against Wolverhampton, Spurs had no midfield control against Chelsea. The Dias Sissoko axis doesn't work. Mourinho came out and said it himself in his early press conferences. You know, I want to play with a defensive midfielder and a passer. So the last 2 games we've had Dias and Sissoko, who can't, certainly at the moment, string a pass between them. Sissoko, I'm going to give a little bit of a buy to, because, as I've said many times before, and we'll get into him soon, Sissoko spends probably 3/4 of his match pretending to be a right back, because Tottenham's right back doesn't play as a right back, or wish to play as a right back seemingly either. But I'll get on to Serge Aurier in a bit. I don't want to start getting too wound up about that right now, because my voice might not be able to handle it. And we need to push on. Midfield, you know, we can all see the kind of player that needs to be in there. Harry Winks is the fitter of the 2 kind of passers of the ball in there. Obviously doesn't have as much final third threat, but I'd be stunned if he doesn't come into the team on Boxing Day against Brighton. And we know the main man is Tonga Dembele. I asked Mourinho about him a couple of days before the game. It was on Friday, and just spoke about what he brings. And he said, you know, he's a number 6, he's number 8, he can play in a pair. And he's a fantastic talent. But the problem is, I think, with Dembele, he's only just come back into training. So I know a lot of people were calling for him to start, but he wasn't really, I don't think they felt he was ready to start. he is the kind of the answer in there, isn't it? He is the missing piece of the puzzle. He can pass, he can dribble, he can get into the final third, he can shoot, he can score. Dyer, for me, has been very inconsistent. I thought we were getting... Every time I think we see something positive from him, the next match is a little bit ropey. And what I would say is very much similar to Tottenham under Mourinho. Spurs have looked good on the whole against the teams they're expected to look good against, but when they've come up against the big boys, Manchester United, Bayern Munich, although it was a bit of a funny match, that one, and Chelsea, they've really looked poor. And I feel that probably in those matches, Dyer hasn't looked great either. Dyer alongside Ndombele for me is still the best partnership in my head on paper. Whether it actually works, I've seen it fail a couple of times, but I still feel that both those players fully sharp will be a really good partnership. But it needs shaking up. I mean, Mourinho must be able to see that. I'm sure he's no fool. But record crowd on Sunday, 61,104 people, and they absolutely watched an absolute load of rubbish. It was just poor from Spurs. It was first shot on target came from Harry Kane in added time at the end of the game. That's not good enough at home in a London derby. It's absolutely appalling. Every player in an attacking sense failed to make an impact. Lucas Moura, for me, very, very disappointing. Struggled to hold the ball. Dele Alli, not much better. Son tried to make inroads, but even he failed, and obviously we'll come to his big moment. Big probably being the wrong word. It just wasn't good enough. It wasn't good enough at all. Let's talk about the first corner. The short corner that led to Chelsea's goal. It was kind of the hammer blow that Spurs just didn't need. And what I think was more annoying, and it certainly annoyed Mourinho afterwards, was that Spurs apparently had trained they've trained a lot in recent weeks on short corners as well. You look at that footage, and I noticed it at the time because it was winding me up before it was taken. I even turned to John Veal from PA and said, Sergio Aurier's talking to Gazzaniga. He wasn't even looking at the corner. And Lucas Moura wasn't much better. He's looking behind to see who was there. Both players left the two men free. Willian comes inside and does the thing that Willian does every single time. Curls the ball, bottom corner, Gazzaniga, no chance. It was... I think I saw, was it Jermaine Genius called it schoolboy kind of defending? And it was the kind of thing where your brain should be trained to do that. And you know that it's a tactic they like to do as well. Yet you're still looking around elsewhere, and both of them took an age. And then I suppose you could argue with Aurier, there was a second mistake in allowing Willian to come inside instead of pushing him wide out to down the flank, knowing that Willian can curl that ball inside with his right foot. It's an absolute mess. And that put Spurs straight away on the back foot. Mourinho wasn't happy about it. He said, despite all the fact that Chelsea did dominate, they had the younger players running through, getting into space. He said the two goals came from absolutely stupid mistakes. And they were. And, let's talk about Sergio Aurier. I hate to kind of go too heavy on a player, and I feel like I have done that with Sergio Aurier over the season, well, probably the last 18 months or so. But I keep coming around to the same point. It's inconsistency. And, for a player of that level, it's his birthday today as well. I hate to be digging him out on his birthday. But for a player of that age who's played for, PSG, for Tottenham, he's played, he's Ivory Coast captain as well. He's a very, very experienced player. He's played in the Champions League for both clubs. He knows what he's doing, but I just think with him, it's like his brain just goes off somewhere. He's meant to be Spurs right back. I get the fact that Mourinho gives him this role where he can be more advanced. He can be almost like a winger, but that doesn't mean he then has no defensive duties. You watch the footage back from the match. There were so many times when he slowly walks down the pitch and allows Sissoko to come across, or allows Sanchez to move across to try and pick up the massive gaping space behind him. I get the sense that tactically that may be part of their job, but it's not tactically his job to then just stay. He did that weird thing again where he stayed in like a number 10 position. I remember him doing it against Bayern Munich and Lamela going mad at him, and he did it again on Sunday. He just kind of wandered infield as if to say, I'll take this position. You guys can sort out the mess. And it's embarrassing. The short corner pretty much came, didn't it, from Aurier not being properly positioned either and heading the ball backwards for a corner instead of getting it away. I worry about that position for Spurs. I think if they're going to keep going with Aurier, I don't know whether you can train someone to be switched on all the time. Maybe it's higher intensity sessions. I don't know, but I just wonder whether after all this time, Pochettino tried it with Aurier, Mourinho's tried it, albeit only for like a month or so. I just wonder whether you can really train someone to be switched on. And also, when we talk about the ambling back slowly, that's desire. Can you teach someone desire? I don't know. He's an incredibly interesting character. Like I said before, I've sat down with him, did a big kind of one-on-one for 20 minutes or half an hour or so. I spoke to him. Very engaging guy, really interesting background. Really interesting to talk to, and he's got talent. He really has. You've seen some of the crosses he's put in. You've seen sometimes the last-ditch tackles he does. The talent is there. It's just whether the mental application is there to be the package that he really can be, because he could be a brilliant right back. I just wonder whether Tottenham Hotspur will ever see it or not. He's not a kid. He's not a young player, and if it just hasn't quite clicked for him yet, you just wonder whether it ever will. I hope it does. Let's move on to another absolute shocker. Paulo Gazzaniga. My goodness. I gave him massive praise against Wolves because I thought he was superb. His saves pushing the ball away from oncoming attackers. Against Chelsea, that moment, it's like he forgot he's a goalkeeper. I couldn't get my head around it at the time. I couldn't get my head around Anthony Taylor's decision to give a free kick to Spurs in the first place. He came out and clotheslined someone with his foot. It was Alonso, wasn't it? There was no logic. I asked Mourinho this yesterday. I said, were you surprised he didn't just kind of come out with his hands or even punch it? He's like, yeah, of course I was surprised. He said, and what worried me probably even more was that he then told me, I spoke to Gazzaniga afterwards, and we spoke about it, and even he didn't seem to be, he kind of wasn't in control of his actions. It's like, that's scary, isn't it? And I think what will be the biggest kind of downside for Gazzaniga is that in these months while Hugo Lloris is out, Gazzaniga's big job really is to make everyone feel that he's the safer pair of hands. Lloris is an amazing shot stopper, one of the world's best. He's a World Cup winner. But when it comes to making daft decisions, Lloris can do that. He's a sweeper keeper, so he does make those mistakes. Gazzaniga, his kind of big, selling point to everyone will be the safer pair of hands. Where were his hands? Honestly, rushing out and kung fu kick, it was absolutely mindless. And that was that, really, wasn't it? 2-0, it then became a mountain, and the Spurs always... But it didn't even look like they were going to score. That was the worrying thing. Obviously, changed it up at half-time, took Dyer off again. Dyer again, the full guy. Christian Eriksen came on. Mourinho says Spurs had a little bit more control. That's probably true. Still didn't create anything. Eriksen's free kicks were just... His set pieces, he's done a couple, hasn't he, this season where, Vertonghen, he set up Vertonghen, didn't he? I think for the winner at Wolves. But on the whole, they're just still so poor. The first man, I don't want to keep going on about it because we repeat so much about this strange habit he's got from one of the best set piece takers in the world to someone that really struggles to beat that first man. So, yeah, it wasn't working. It just wasn't working on the pitch. There's certain players... there was no life to it. There was no Ryan Sessegnon on the bench. There was no spark or pace to bring on. Lo Celso, again, just sitting there like a cardboard cutout, essentially, on the bench. Even Danny Rose came on, didn't he, late on as well. And Dembele probably made a bit of an impact. He was probably the one of the three subs that actually made something happen. You do wonder, if you'd had Sessegnon on there, then you could have brought him on instead of Rose and had an attacking threat as well as a defensive player. And then Son did what, unfortunately, Son is getting a bit of a habit of doing. I can see why people are getting upset with Rudiger. I mean, Mourinho's livid with Rudiger. He will not stop going on about it. Rudiger... there was a foul in there as well. Some people are saying about a punch on Son. I think that's probably one of those where you're looking at it in slow-mo. It's not quite so much that. He definitely clatters him. Let's put it that way. It's probably the best word to use. And then Son goes down and he just does this daft, petulant thing. He kicks out. Rudiger over-exaggerates, of course he does, Mourinho joking afterwards or saying about, oh, he must be in hospital now to look at his ribs and all that. Yeah, I get all of that. Obviously, it was a difficult scenario. Mourinho clearly not bothered about talking about the player who obviously was also at the centre of the racist abuse allegations. But Son, it's Son. Son's brilliant. I love Son. I love interviewing him. He's a really fun guy to interview. He's a wonderful footballer. But this year especially, he's developing a bit of a petulant streak to him. We saw it at Bournemouth, wasn't it? He lashed out at Jefferson Lerner, wasn't it? Again, provocation, of course. Exaggeration afterwards, of course. He still did it. And then against Everton, we know his challenge was not the one that caused Andre Gomes to have that awful injury. It was a culmination of everything. But the fact is, the initial challenge was a petulant challenge. It was. And now here we are again against Chelsea. Massive game. Spurs needing to find a way back. He does that, and it truly is game over. Spurs, obviously, we just found out in the last hour or so, have failed in their appeal. What a shock. I couldn't. Mourinho said that yesterday, and I could not believe they were appealing it. Perhaps fortunate not to even get a frivolous appeal. I'm not sure if they're still doing that, where you get a potential extra game on top for a frivolous appeal. Because Mourinho's biggest qualm about it all was the fact that he felt it shouldn't have been an instance that VAR was used. And he's saying about it's an insignificant kick out, but David Beckham knows all about insignificant kickouts, doesn't he? In the World Cup, and he got sent off at one of the biggest games. It doesn't matter if you're going to do that. Then you're not thinking of the team. You're thinking of retribution in a moment for yourself. And unfortunately, he's now going to miss the next 3 games, which brings us on to opportunities. Let's try and find some positives in all of this absolute mess that was Sunday afternoon. If Son's going to be out, it's going to force Mourinho to change things slightly. There's different ways he can play. There's possible... Winks or Ndombele could come into midfield. Sissoko could take Son's place, playing further up the pitch where, he's actually played pretty well when he's played there in this season. Or, as we've said before, Lo Celso. Spurs have a massive playmaker issue. Under Mourinho, that is especially... He goes for a solid team which is maybe based more on direct running and counter-attacking. Dele Alli almost has to be the playmaker, which isn't really his role. He's better as a link man with Kane, someone who's making those runs himself or doing little flicks and stuff. He's not really the guy that you want to get on the ball and set the tempo and play the through balls, things like that. That was Christian Eriksen for Spurs. We know now he's not starting matches. Mourinho has indicated his teams will suggest what the future is. He's not starting matches. He's clearly gone. He's off. So whether he will go back on that and start Eriksen out of necessity, it's such a bad message to send to Lo Celso, personally, I feel. Lo Celso can do that. He can link up play. He mucked it up in Munich. He was rubbish in Munich. He didn't take his chance whatsoever in a team of players, barring probably Foyth and Sessegnon, who didn't take their chances. But he needs another opportunity. He does. I feel that Spurs are going to end up with him anyway, because I do believe Spurs will make top 4. I think Mourinho, given time, will sort out the defensive issues, and I think they will still do it. And in that case, Spurs will end up with Lo Celso as part of the contract. He has to sign for Tottenham for 34 million at the end of the season if they qualify for the Champions League. So get using him, because this is his opportunity. Give him a run of games. The problem is, obviously, with 2 days, just 48 hours between Brighton and Norwich matches, is that you're not going to see many of the same faces in both matches. But this is still a chance for Lo Celso maybe to play 2 out of the 3 games that Son's out. Possibly Sessegnon. He might decide Sessegnon. If it was just me, I'd maybe give Lucas a rest for the next game, because I just thought he was pretty poor. He was awesome. He was superb against Wolves. Don't get me wrong. His goal was fantastic. Against Chelsea, it was like having a bit of a passenger. Just the ball bounced off him like a wall. And he wasn't alone in that, so I'm not picking him out individually. But I do wonder whether, maybe have a look at Sessegnon on the left, Ali in the middle, Lo Celso on the right behind Kane. Maybe give that a try. Some fresh legs, pace, creativity, something different on Ndombele and Dyer in the middle. Dyer obviously only played the 45 minutes. for me, that's quite an exciting team. I quite like the sound of that. Trying to remember whether that was the team that lined up against Munich. It wasn't. It wasn't quite, was it? Because you had because Kane wasn't playing. But yeah, it's got to be just something a little bit different, something a little bit with a bit more flair. And I know Mourinho's he's been trying not to make Tottenham this defensive outfit. He wants to kind of retain some of that attacking flair, but unfortunately, when he's going to pick a midfield like that, with no playmakers whatsoever in the team, then you're going to get performances like that. It just wasn't good enough whatsoever. Which brings us to the January transfer window. Club have been very kind of consistent on this, really. Everything that I'm hearing out of the club is that they're not looking to do any business. It's not going to be a window where they do business. The only way they do business is if someone goes. Then they would maybe look to replace them. Concerns me slightly because I still feel right back, as I said earlier, is a massive issue. I still believe that they could do with another, perhaps a holding midfielder. If Wanyama, I'd be stunned if he doesn't leave next month. And if they are going to replace him with a player. Obviously, Matic, there's lots of rumours that he's on the way out of United, a favoured Mourinho man. Spurs could just do with that strength. And obviously, if you're going to lose Eriksen, if they can get him out in January, which is probably ideal for all parties, isn't it? Let's be honest. Then you're going to need another playmaker because you're relying heavily on Lo Celso, a player that Mourinho's word still isn't even adjusted to the Premier League yet. So I'd definitely look at that. I think left back, you'll have Davies. I think left back's probably fine for now, isn't it? I think Rose isn't going anywhere. Davies is going to be coming back early part of next year. Sessegnon can play there, although it's a role for the future. Goalkeeper, I think that'll be something I'll look at the end of the season more than anything. Central defence, Alderweireld signing up's a biggie, isn't it? And he likes Foyth as well. So I think probably you're okay there. I just wonder, obviously there's always the second striker thing, but if he's not going to play Parrott, you come back to that same old problem of who do you bring in to play second fiddle to Kane, because Mourinho isn't going to play with two up front either. It's going to be Son, Lucas or Parrott who are going to back up Kane. So I think pretty much that's it, isn't it? I think you're looking at a playmaker to replace Eriksen if he goes, a defensive midfielder to replace Wanyama if he goes, and I'd still love to see another right back because he doesn't trust Walker Peters. He's another manager clearly that doesn't, although you'd think he would play one of these games over the festive period. Foyth, he doesn't feel that Foyth fits the role of a more attacking right back. He could do a job, but it would be more a defensive one. So yeah, I know the club, Mourinho is preaching this, Levy's preaching this, it's not going to be busy. I just get a feeling they're going to get rid of a couple of these players, and I think that then kind of gives them license to bring in a couple of players. I think they need it. I think they just need that little bit of life. I know for Mourinho it's 25 new players in his eyes he's taken on, but they're the same players that have been doing the same thing regardless of who the coaches are. It needs some change. So I'm going to wrap it up there because I'm very aware it's Christmas Eve and I don't want you wasting your Christmas Eve listening to me waffling on. So obviously a very Merry Christmas to everyone. I hope you have a wonderful day with your families or whatever you're doing. Keep an eye out on Christmas Day evening. There'll be some more Mourinho quotes going live. And obviously we're back with Boxing Day in Brighton and hopefully Tottenham Hotspur putting things right. So I shall catch you then. And like I say, have a lovely Christmas. Bye.